So, my name is John Katsir. Welcome, everybody. I write for Forbes and consult with tech companies. I'll be your MC for the day. The next session is a panel. The title is Loyalty in Brands, the Difference Between Millennials and Gen Z. We have a moderator, Norm Gordon, who is a social media influencer, and from DearMishuDad. That probably deserves some explanation. We also have some panelists, Carol Tran, who is the head of growth at Dolby Labs, and we have Elko Ian, who's the founder and CEO at paintgun.io. Norm, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to this session. Customer loyalty is something that affects every business. And there is a sense among brands that the younger generations are less loyal to brands. This panel will dive into that question. But first, I want to show you the cutoffs. Do you see the slide of the cutoffs?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So just so we are at the same page, here is the general cutoff of 4 different generations. The silent generation grew up during the Depression. The boomers are that post-war Vietnam War generation. Kurt Cobain, by the way, is his own generation. Just kidding. That's Gen X, late 60s to late 70s, or the smallest generation. And our focus today, ladies and gentlemen, is on Gen Y, the millennials, who are late 1970s through mid-90s, and of course, Gen Z from around 1995 through around 2012. So let me introduce the panel and we can get started. Carol, why don't you start introducing yourself?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Carol Tran, and I'm the head of growth at Dolby Laboratories. Prior to working at Dolby, I have a lot of experience working with startups, started my own business, and a lot of the experience is with Millennials and Gen Z.
Thank you. Elko?
Sure. Thank you so much for the intro, Angie. So my name is Elko Ian. I'm the founder of paintgun.io. And what we do is we help tech startups grow. So we particularly help like Series A and Series B companies who are in the mobile app business. And we have a specific interest for helping those audiences helping those companies that address the millennial and Gen Z audiences.
Great introduction. Really glad to have you.
Sorry,
yes,
I forgot to include this in my introduction as well, really quickly. So the audience here, I normally would announce this at the end, but if you, I'm currently offering free growth hacking services, just because right now with the experience of startups, I understand how hard it is. So if you go to my LinkedIn and you can see the details there, if you qualify, I'm definitely going to give you the time to help you grow your business. So right now it's the time to be together and band together. There's also other services as well that would help you if you don't qualify for that.
Great.
I think it's pretty good for everyone to come together in a time like this, right, Carol? So that's really such a good opportunity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. As for me, my name is Angie, and a couple of years ago, I created a social media character based on my dog. The character is DearMishu, and she's an advice columnist for humans. And most of her followers are indeed micro-influencers, Gen Z and millennials. And I share my experience, so I write a lot, speak, and recently do coaching about influencer marketing. Okay, let's get started. And by the way, you feel free to drop questions for the panelists into the chat Q&A area, and so we'll get to them. Okay. All right. Are you ready?
Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it.
Go. All right. So it seems like brand loyalty is a thing of the past that almost doesn't exist anymore. Is that correct? Carol, why don't you start? If you may.
Could you repeat that question again?
It seems like brand loyalty
Yeah.
is a thing of the past that almost doesn't exist anymore. Like loyalty almost doesn't exist anymore, it seems. Is that correct?
I disagree. Depends on the scenario. I believe that your brand is instead of focusing on what people want to hear, talk about why you built this company, or why are you even, if you're not the founder, you didn't build it, why are you working for that company? There was a reason, a passion why you're there. So that is very important to me when I look at companies. What is your mission? Why did you do that? That should be your brand, which is transparency, visibility, and really having a relationship with your customers and knowing what they want. And so their brand loyalty is like, I'm loyal to what you're building. You are solving a problem, and that impacts me. So it's very important to look at that aspect and not so much on like, what story should I create? What fun ads should I do? But really focus on the core reason why you're there, why you created the business, or, why are you so passionate about working there? That's what I see is the loyalty that our current society is looking for.
So that's very interesting. So not just like, hey, I'm a brand. You need me so much. I'm great. But it's more like, hey, I'm talking your language. I'm sensitive to what you need. You're going to loyal to me because I'm sensitive to your generation.
I wouldn't say sensitive. If you start talking about sensitivity, it's more about self-awareness, being aware of what is going on in our current environment, right? Sometimes the businesses that fail many times, but it doesn't mean they fail completely. As long as they see what's going on, they respond to the environment. It fluctuates. Today, your customers love you. Tomorrow, they may go to your competitor. So instead of saying sensitivity or being cautious of what they focus on why are you building it. Just because you are sensitive about it, that's great. But if you start focusing too much about being tiptoeing around, then you lose the ability of your focus on why are you building this company in the first place? Why are you even working there in the first place, right? Because people join a business because they believe in what they're doing. Fine, there's other situations. It might be for the paycheck or anything like that, or because you think this is the right product market fit. But when you do that, you're going to have stumbles. So focus more on the fact that, are you speaking the truth from your company? Why are you solving this pain? Who are you serving it? And what's the big picture? How are you making an impact in this world? When you do that, then you're going to notice that you might create a niche that you didn't think you were going to do until you notice that, because you're speaking the truth and being more visible and transparent of why you're building this company.
Nice. Thank you for the insights. Elko, what do you think?
Think about what specifically?
About my question, is it still relevant? Is it still, is loyalty still exist or doesn't exist anymore among the new generation, among young people?
Okay, so the way loyalty is perceived has definitely changed. If we look at like the different generations, they all had a different brand loyalty. Previous generations generally had less choice and more affinity and more loyalty to brands, and the younger the generation. So if we go from like generation X to like the Millennials and Gen Z, we see that people are somewhat less loyal. Yeah, it's because especially with more choice, and then especially like Generation Z, they they don't care so much about staying with one brand. They're much more conscious of price, right? So Generation Z is known to be the generation that they don't really care so much about sticking to one brand, but they want to make the best decision based on price because they're much more money conscious. And so I think in a way loyalty in brands has definitely changed, and brands have to fight harder to win the hearts over for people because they know that everyone is just switching nowadays, and they have to win in different areas, right? So it's not only about having a quality product, but it's also about having really having messaging that resonates with a certain community that the people are part of, right? And if the messaging doesn't resonate, if you're not having the right response in, like, for example, what's going on right now, right? Like with Black Lives Matter, like the response of a brand can determine if someone wants to switch from one brand to another, let's say. And so I think, loyalty has definitely changed, and brands need to be very careful nowadays.
So you said that loyalty still exists or almost doesn't exist?
Of course, it still exists, but what I'm saying is that through the generations,
Been changed.
you can
The
see
standard.
you can look at generations like intergenerational, where you compare one generation with another, and the younger generation you look at, there's less loyalty towards brands, right? They switch more often. And then there's like this McKinsey study which shows that like the biggest factor for Gen Z to decide on certain products and items and brands is in fact price, right? So they care much more about price, and they know that the different brands can offer them this product or service, right? And so they're less loyal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. Thank you. Thank you for your insight. As you can see from the slide above, so I did some reading in academic research. Lucky for me, my wife is from the university, so I can access large data. And quite many academic research say that only millennials are loyal. And I felt quite weird about that just one generation is mentioned as loyal. But maybe I'm wrong. What is your experience of feeling about that, Carol, if you may?
Okay, you're making a statement that you believe that generation, like the millennials, are the only loyal ones. Is that what you just said?
Many academic research made a statement that only the millennials are loyal. Other generations are not. So Gen Z is not. Only millennials are loyal. Do you know where it comes from?
Okay, I would have to say, I think, first of all, I'm big on data. So as a growth hacker, I just don't do only just marketing. I looking at the entire ship, right? Like if you have a business, I look at product, engineering, services, to sales, to finances, everything, to understand and then sail the ship of the boat, right? So all I'm hearing is that the academic research is saying that millennials are much more loyal than others. But understand, millennials probably provide the most data online because they are the ones who actually was the beginning of all the internet, right? And so there's a lot of collection of data about them being, meeting other individuals online, creating forums, talking to them. And if anything, if you are in B2C, understand that millennial moms are the big purchasers, right? So they're on there because they're speaking, they're talking to forums. They want to be the cool mom because they're still young, but at the same time, they still want the nurturing and talking to other mothers and other people. How are they recommending to be the best mom, to be raising their family, okay? And then if you look at millennials, it's such a huge range of decades. If you look at it, it's not even like a small segment. So you're looking at, is it the upper range of millennials, the younger? So when we're really talking about loyalty, you can talk about any generation to be loyal. There's different things that they trigger them that causes them to not be loyal anymore. That's what I would look at. When you're a business, look at what triggers them to not be loyal anymore, because they all have different triggers, rather than saying, will this generation is more loyal than the others. Understand what medium they're using, right? If millennials use more on forums, and you know the high purchasers are millennial moms, then understand what works with them. How do they talk to each other? What does Generation X does? They're like a blend of a little bit of before, the internet, but yet they came into the internet afterwards when they got a little older. So they still understand that. Boomers didn't get that. So they're catching up and understanding these little things. But it doesn't mean that there aren't cool boomers who are in there and wanting to learn. But as a generation moves on, it's sort of like a cycle. If you think about fashion, right? It cycles back. If you look at it now, the boomers were like, they went through this tough time during the Depression. Then you got the Generation X, who's going to be more freedom, talking about, I want more rights, and they're fighting for it. And then millennials, it's more of like, you guys, we don't need to work in the office. Everything's on the internet. So we are progressing based on the technology in our society. And now we're hitting back to Generation Z, who's a little bit considered as more responsible, but yet at the same time, they don't want to be attached to other generations. So look at them. What do they looking at? They're missing out on face-to-face. They didn't have that bond that boomers have, or Generation X, or even a little bit of millennial. They are a little bit more scared. They are more attuned to their parents and their loved ones, because they see money being spent everywhere. So each generation that goes through is a result of previous generations, like default, like their faults in there. So when you start learning more about that, what that certain generation does, start segmenting them into different cohorts. So that helps you actually create better marketing, create better products, and actually price right.
That's awesome. I really like your tip about find what triggered them. That's a very good tip. By the way, a fun fact about Carol. Carol went to a college with a focus on neuroscience and theater, and she acted in Hollywood as an actress for 1 year for several shows and commercials. Can you believe it? Okay, Elko, do you have anything to add before we move out to see some interesting videos from 30 years ago?
Yeah, I would say that I think it's clever what Carol's saying, that you should look at each of the generations separately, and you can find, you have to target to them differently, right? And I think each of them deserves a different approach. That's definitely true. Like, if we look at like the different generations, we do see that the millennials do seem the more loyal ones, and that's also because we're the ones that, I say we, but like millennials are the ones that suddenly had all the benefits from the internet, right? And all of a sudden we were like bombarded with all the new tools and technologies. And this is the generation who loves to go online and go to like price comparison websites and like figure out what's the best product and like what really works for them. And because of that, once we make a decision about a brand or an app or any kind of service, we stick to it, right? Because we've researched we think we know our stuff, right? And then on the base of that, we stick to a brand. And we think it's very important that they have a certain kind of conscious attitude towards the world. Whereas like, if we look at one generation after, we look at like Generation Z, and if we compare, your question was around like, are only millennials loyal, right? And then
because that's what the academia research
says. So if you compare it to like Generation Z, or you compare it to like Generation X and Y that came before or after, then you can see that with Generation Z, they basically didn't have this change that the millennials experienced, where everybody, millennials were used to like suddenly internet coming, dial-up modem, like all the technology were invented. But Generation Z is like born with it, right? So they're like born with this world of internet, and so for them, they haven't been used to like doing all the research and find the ideal thing to be part of. For them, every option is always available at any point in time, right? So for them, they don't need to make a decision and stick to a brand as much as the millennials do. So yeah, I think it's even possible to say that millennials are the only generation that's like truly loyal, whereas like the one that's coming after is much less loyal.
All right. Thank you. We have only 10 minutes until session is closed. I have a surprise. I want to show you a short video. It's an advertisement from 30 years ago, 1985 or 1980. And let's watch it and then we discuss it, okay?
The other day, my boyfriend was touching my skin. The other day, said, "You feel so smooth and so good." Said, "You feel." When I told him my business secret.
Even across America, even their ordinary soap, Dove 7
The Dove skin felt dry and brittle. But after 7 days with Dove, it feels soft and supple.
Dove is one quarter moisturizing cream. It doesn't dry your face like soap.
With Dove, I feel like I'm washing my face with cream. It's almost like getting a massage.
Dove is better than soap. You can feel it in your skin.
All right. So on that ad, I believe we saw testimonial of paid actors, and I wonder if that will work today with Gen Z and or millennial. Tell me your brief opinion about it because we don't have much time left.
Yes, actually today I was just on the phone like literally 3 hours ago, and it's with someone who creates strategy briefs for influencers that they film and they do the recommendations, which is also for millennial audiences. And so it still exists. The only difference with today is that it doesn't happen on TV, but it happens on Instagram, right? So that's very much a difference. And then like also the difference is that, it might not be a big shoot that goes on somewhere that's very organized in such a way, but it can be a campaign, a strategy that's thought out, and a brief is given to a number of influencers and they execute on the same idea. And so the same thing happens today, only happens in a more kind of digital Instagram, TikTok kind of way, right?
Great. By the way, fun fact about Elko. Elko great-great-great-grandfather was a pirate, and more importantly, one of the first documented pirate with a wooden leg. That's awesome, Elko.
Angie, how did you find out about this?
I have my own research capability. I'm a researcher.
How do you know this?
Hey, can you tell me a little bit about brands that do it right? They do it successfully in terms of getting loyalty. And what's your suggestion to them now with the post reopening of the market post COVID-19? I know it's a long question, but if you can keep it like short answer, that would be great. Elko, do you
me?
have,
Sorry.
you want to talk? Do you want Carol to
Carol. No, okay, I'll do it. So which one do you want me, the COVID question or the first one? I can do both.
Both.
Okay. So first, I would say that like a brand that is really, like a brand that has like a lot of loyalties, like a brand like Supreme, I think that really hits it really hard with like the millennials and Gen Z as well. And they have really cracked the code on let's say loyalty. Then I won't go into detail around that, but there's a lot to say about it. You can look at like the influence around it are people like it's like the guy who designed the Yeezy sneakers, and this American guy, and he was then hired by Louis Vuitton to be the head of design for Louis Vuitton. And like he has this brand called Off-White, right? And it's like very popular. It's like the most trending streetwear brand in the United States. And like someone like him gets extreme loyalty, right, in the US. And then as for the COVID answer, like, Corona, what it did two things. It kind of like accelerated technological development, and it triggered like a massive crisis, like financial, but also social, psychological. So I think what we see is that, tech development will accelerate what is already happening. And I think what we see is not like a new roaring 20s, but more like kind of a Great Depression 30s with like a tech component. However, having said that, I think that like you learn that a lot of the best businesses were start in like downturns, right? So from I think from Slack to like Microsoft to like all the big ones were started in crises. So I think this is also a time when a lot of good things can happen. So what brands should do is really, come together, think small, and then create really valuable opportunities for consumers and for other companies to engage with, and then yeah, they can be successful.
I hope that they bring some optimism. Carol,
Do my best.
short answer. We have 4 more minutes.
Okay, just in light with what Elko says, I totally, absolutely agree on that. The thing is definitely, it's not going to be like the roaring 20s, obviously. We have a little bit more, lax laws compared to 1920s, right? Where that was like, alcohol wasn't even,
Oh,
allowed.
yeah, in the 1920s, they ended the crisis with parties all day, right?
Right. So if you really look at Gen Z, if you really look at it, they are around the age of 5 to 25, okay, roughly. And they are looking at their parents, their struggle in the fact that, they're trying to save money and they're a little bit more physical, financially sound. So they're being more financially literate. So if you look at that, I would tap into more of, if you're looking to start a business, think about finances, think about how it can help Generation Z be a little better than that. They're a little bit more savvy. They never grew up during the times of struggle. They're still young and they're living it right now. And they're seeing millennials, whoa, they're struggling. They have so much debt. So they are going the opposite. Okay. And so they have only lived only through the internet. So the internet has been what they've adapted to. So, but because of now being in sheltering in place with the COVID, you think they would adapt the easiest, but understand there's a lot of loneliness there and a lot of not ability to connect with another human because they only live through their screen. So looking in the searching for places for them to connect with other humans that can stimulate their minds while they're growing during this age would be gaming. That would be a great opportunity to incentivize them to think and learn. So they're thinkers, but they don't have the privilege that we used to have in other generations where there's a lot of like in person and they grew up just literally on hyper, communication, heavy use of that. So they actually know how to pick and select what they need to take in. So as you are a business, look into understanding more of the concerns of Gen Z. They're young, but they're smart. They're seeing what the mistakes are, and they want to go and not deal with the same generations prior to them. And millennials, okay. Yeah.
we have to wrap up. I got it. We have to wrap up. One sentence for the audience to take back to the offices. Elko. Carol.
Can be on anything?
One sentence for them to take back to the office, learning from this session.
I think one sentence. Yeah, it's like there's good things coming, and I think even though Gen Z is described as like the loneliest generation, it's also a generation who was maybe the most inspiring one. So I think we have good things to come ahead of us.
Carol?
Okay, really wrap it up. Don't focus too much on the generation here and there, like what they want to hear. Do what you are building, right? Focus on that as number one. Why are you building this? You saw a problem, you created this business for a reason, but if you are actually not the founder and you actually work somewhere, why are you there? It could be personal reason, it's fine. But if you really dig deep, you are either a salesperson, a marketer, or a product person, you still have to figure out why that founder created that. So focus on that. And when you do, you're able to find your niche and you're able to find the generation that will be loyal to you. And so speaking the truth and transparency is the number one thing I think is the takeaway here.
Oh yeah, transparency brings reputation and that loyalty for sure. Great. Thanks to our 2 great panelists and to you. I'm talking about you, the audience. Thank you for your attention, and see you next year. Hopefully in person. Peace.